And so we have the participants for the English cohort, and we have 19 people in this cohort, and we have the participants of the Brazilian cohort. And so we are gonna be in these two languages, the 3 hours with everyone. And so we have 30 participants in Brazil. And also I'm gonna put in the chat, so we have a lot of guests today. So you two, the co-developers, and it's such a pleasure and honor to have you here. And we have a lot of practitioners, and we are gonna have a shift and share after the celebrity interview. So it will be amazing. Okay, so we did something for you, Henri, and I would like you to enjoy.
Que povo bonito de ouvir e olhar.
What a beautiful people to see and to watch. They're like an orchestra of beach waves. What a beautiful people to see and to watch. It's like an orchestra of beach waves.
Henri, sempre com um sorriso no canto da boca, um olhar vivo e atento às próximas palavras, um ouvir aguçado e curioso. Em sua sabedoria, ele já enxerga ao longe. Uma jornada admirável de bons anos, uma trajetória precisa e necessária para muitos. Como uma águia que olha para o todo em voos altos e com nobre capacidade de foco, voa exato para o alvo, se conecta com os detalhes e lança uma pergunta, como uma flecha no ar, certeira, provocativa. Ele nos traz inspiração para uma nova linguagem, a cada dia, a cada encontro e em cada estrutura. Provocações amorosas talvez sejam a sua especialidade. E elas nos despertam, nos libertam, criando expansão em novas possibilidades, em um desfrutar da consciência. Henri desperta o melhor em nós, soprando o moinho dos ventos da inovação.
O trovão que berra, reflete o som do céu na terra.
If there's anyone who doesn't want the spotlight, I think it's you, but you've got it. You've got it.
Yeah, and so let's go for the celebrity interview and how we are going to do that. So first, you are going to craft some questions for Henri and Keith. And so I put in the chat. You're going to have 7 minutes to craft those questions, and you're going to be in small groups. And to be in a small group, you're going to open your breakout rooms, and you can see it's open there. And you have some rooms with the England flag, so it means that it be in English, and Brazilian flag will be in Portuguese. So you choose the room that you want to go, and it will be 4 or 5, 6 people in each room. 5 to 6 people in each room. So you just choose your room, go there. 5 people, yeah, and just craft a couple of questions. So 1 or 2 questions to bring here, and then we're going to ask Henri and Keith.
Just adding something, Carol. Our international guests and our Brazilian guests can mix and mingle, get to know the different people in the groups, help, do whatever they want.
And Henri, here we are. Okay, so how it's gonna work? I'm gonna call room by room, and we have a total of 8 rooms. So probably we're gonna have 8 questions for you both. And because if it is Henri's birthday, so he can choose if Keith is gonna answer or not. And yeah, and probably we're gonna have more or less like 6 minutes for each question.
This is very generous to give me the opportunity to choose once a year. Thank you. That's really great. I appreciate this.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to room 1. And so we have Derek, Elena, Kelly, Lucas, Ryan, Tom, and Vanessa. Who wants to ask the question for them?
I can do it, but I also welcome others from the room. Okay, I will raise my hand. Oh, sorry. Oh, that's, and I'm clapping because I'm so happy to be here. So thank you. This is great. Okay, so one question. So the first question, sorry, I'm going to lower my hand. It's so nice to meet you. And so the first question is, what is the problem that you were trying to solve with creating liberating structures?
You say, you asked the question as if it was just one problem.
I'm thinking, well, yeah, of course, it's more than
structures are designed to solve any problem, whatever.
I guess I'm wondering what the motivation was. What was the drive that made you go, okay, we need to sit down and create these structures?
All right, I'll start a little bit, Keith, and then you pick it up.
Please.
I think for me, fundamentally, the original motivation was that I worked for 30 years in management position, bigger and bigger and bigger responsibility with many countries and so forth. And I had 30 years of experience of how dysfunctional the system of managing organization was, and dealing with people, even with the best intentions. And I give myself credit, of course, for having the best intentions. I was still doing a lousy job because I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to do it. I had never learned how to do it. And so this is where liberating structures come in, is there are methods, tools, whatever words you want to use, to make it easy and possible to manage people, to work with people, to help people to collaborate, to work together, to solve problems and so forth. It's really, I know Keith doesn't particularly like the word tool, but I'm not sure that there is a better one. It's a fantastic toolbox. So that's really where it started. Keith, you started earlier, so you probably had some.
Well, if there was a problem, it was the degree to which there was theory and ideas about a different kind of organization, but very little practical there was very little simple, easy to copy for everybody material out there. And a lot of it was wrapped up in, I'll say, countermeasures to the problems that the current set of rules were generating. So there was a typical way of operating, and the material that was practical that was out there was just trying to keep the same rules, but make that less the way that people are excluded, the way that creativity is stifled, the way that we're over controlled in most organizing, those things. We were papering those things over, and I tried most of them, you know, in participatory leadership. There's a long list, change management, you know, long list of things, and they fundamentally didn't change the rules. So the problem was the rules kept generating the same patterns, the same problems. So the problem was we need new rules for the fundamental organizing. And I don't know if that makes any sense, but I think that we got crazy ideas in our head from complexity science, you know, that like, okay, if we go to the first principles or fundamentals, what would some different rules be? And the science is pretty, you know, they didn't translate it to human organizing well. There were a few people that were doing that 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And we were trying hard to translate that. Yeah, okay, I love it. I guess I'm done. I'm definitely done. Yeah, thanks for the good question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, back at you.
Yes, I'm just going to say a little bit again what I just said in the beginning. So I'm gonna call room by room, and we are gonna have 6 minutes for each question. So we have 7 questions more to come. And so we have room 3 with Laura V, Margaret, Marcus, Nicole, Steve, and Valerie, who is gonna ask the question and come to the stage. So please raise your hand or open your mic. And if you're not the one, so it's Nicole coming.
Yeah, it's gonna be me, Carolina, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Good to be here and engage in this conversation. So we had, I think, seven of us were in our room, and we had several questions, but we sort of narrowed it down to 2. So the first one is, how can we mix liberating structures with other approaches or methodologies, such as the example that was used was the jigsaw classroom. So how do you combine liberating structures with other approaches and other ways of doing things?
Why not just combine them? Period. I mean, why look for how? Just do it. I mean, it's like, you know, I use the word tools. I'm going to use that word tools again. They are tools. You pick the one that suits the moment of what you're trying to do, and that's it. I mean, there is no...
Listen in.
I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do here to turn this phone off. So, I mean, it's a stupid answer, but that's the only one I can think of.
So it's literally experimenting then. That's just try it.
Yeah.
Well, I think what we discovered that we were primarily, when we got started, we were working in business organizations or nonprofits, and really not much in classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And once the basic, you know, the other people who were teachers or in classrooms, all students and teachers grokked it, you know, understood it in their, throughout their body, they did that work. So I've learned a lot from educators, a couple are on this call, on this Zoom, about adapting the work to a classroom and how it fits into existing transformative work that's going on in classrooms, and there's a lot of that, is really up to the people working in that domain every day, because a lot of this is practice and experimentation, as Henri is suggesting. Just get in there, roll up your sleeves, and I have learned a tremendous amount since we published just about education and classrooms and learning from people who are expert in that domain.
Anyone from the group wanted to sort of assess that out? I think, Marcos, it was your question. Does that response, you know, sort of answer the question for you in your mind?
I have this wonderful table that was created by a friend of mine.
Yes.
Who took all the
Yes.
structure thing and put it in plastic. And
Yes.
you know, the answer to your question is in there. It is, you know, the list of things that can be done with any one of the structure. Each one of them is designed for a particular purpose, and you know, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever other method you are using, when the need comes from one of those objectives, you take the delivering structure that fit. If it is a, you know, a tris or a fishbowl or 15% or whatever, or min specs that fits what you're trying to accomplish. And that's really, it's a little, you know, the comparison with tools is worn out, but this is it. You know, you have a screw in your hand, you need a screwdriver. You know, you need to make a hole, you need a drill. And it's a little bit that kind of a thing. They are very targeted, very specific. And but in addition to that, my recommendation is like Keith, you have to play with the structure to become comfortable with them, so that you're familiar, you relax about it, you know what they do, and then it comes naturally. There is not a real, it comes naturally to look for something. And of course, very often it will happen that this may not be the perfect choice. And so you say, oh, this didn't quite come out the way we wanted. We should try something else. And so you improvise, and that's fine.
Well, and Nicole, I think you're also asking about just other wonderful approaches, right? So the other wonderful approaches, what we've found is Liberating Structures plays very well with lots of other approaches. And it's because it's so incredibly micro and simple that there's no reason. And since we published, we have played well with Agile and lots of other methodologies that people like, that have good attributes, and pretty much there's not much friction. It's not much friction. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
I think when Carolina comes back, that means you get only one question asked.
Time.
Sure. That's the hook. That's the hook, Nicole.
Oh, that's the hook.
That's
okay,
the hook. I've learned.
So how much time do I have, Carolina? We might be able to get another one in the.
Yes, we need to get going. So
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so I'm gonna call the Sala 1. So room 1 in Portuguese. So Arlete, Elise, Nomura, Patrice, Paula, who's gonna ask the question. And when you come here, you can ask in Portuguese.
Hi, Carolina. I'm going to be asking the question. Okay. So actually, these questions came from something that made me restless. I work a lot with groups, but I also work a lot individually. And the question is, how do I apply, of course, if it is possible, but I believe it is, how can I apply liberating structures in interactions or processes that are one-on-one, individual processes? So I'm talking about coaching sessions, feedback conversations, or reflections, or any other type of individual type dynamics within group workshops.
Henry, do
Go
you want me
ahead,
to
Keith.
start, or what do you want to?
Yes, start, because I listened to more than half of the question in the original language, so you probably
Which you're not fluent in Portuguese, last I checked.
No, I was just trying to guess, and I got some of it, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think it wasn't obvious to me the degree to which most of the liberating structures could be made individually useful. So take, for example, the generative relationship star. Have you used that before?
I haven't, sorry. I'm just starting to get familiar with the liberating structure. So,
well, what it suggests is generative things that you didn't expect or was surprised that it has value. You want to generate those, and there's 4 things that are important, and they can work for the group and the individual. So they are the separateness or difference or diversity of within you or within the group, the degree to which you're talking and tuning into one another, the degree to which you have action opportunities, you can do something together, and finally, are you clear about why you're together, the purpose, the reason to be? So it's STAR, star, generative relationship star. And so we started playing around with that. You know, can an individual use it? Can an individual also get peer coaching within the context of a group? And so the one-on-one coaching is really through group participants. And I don't know if it's directly answering your question, but I've been surprised by, and people in this community, there are many coaches, and they immediately started to translate the liberating structures to their coaching work. So even something like the eco-cycle, which is a portfolio of your activities and your relationships, we introduce that at the group level or the company level, through an individual making their own list and making their own assessments within the eco-cycle. So that wasn't obvious to me when we first started. That's something that came later.
So
thank you. That's interesting.
I think I'm going to try to repeat something that I said in connection with the previous question, which is play around with the structure and try to use all of them and find out which ones don't work. And you might be surprised. The other thing, of course, is that there is nothing that forces you to use the entire structure in your coaching. You can just use a piece of the structure, such as a question or one of the steps or 2 of the steps and so forth. So it's really a matter of you developing the fluency more than, and discovering by yourself what it is that you can do. And you can do this experimenting pretty without risk, basically, you know, just playing around by yourself whenever the opportunity arises and so forth. And not really much can go wrong, you know. I mean, if it does, it doesn't matter. You move on to something else, etc. But the other thing that I would say about coaching is that I personally find it difficult to believe that you can just coach individual people and not find a way to enter their groups or the group within which they function or work or whatever, and that you can coach people separately as opposed to being aware of what is happening to them or with them or what they are doing within the group that they are spending time with, you know, whether they are. And you can't separate the individuals. So
that's right.
Liberating structure become that much more important.
I need 30 seconds, Carolina.
Go ahead.
So when we did coaching sessions after workshops in Brazil was the first place where we did some workshops, and people would come in and they had very personal, they translated the work as personal. I need to talk about their list of things to talk about were my relationship with my spouse, my kid, the school, and down there somewhere at the bottom was business and work. And they thought for sure I was a therapist. And I was like, oh, no. And Henry I don't think they thought that about you, Henry, but anyway, I just wanted to tell that brief story. Yeah. Good, great question.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Good luck. Have fun. And
Thanks.
So many great stories. But we want to hear from all rooms, right? So now Sala 2, Carolina, Luiz, Luisa, Mônica e Rafael.
All right. Well, I will do it in English, and then we skip at least the understanding of Keith's and Henry's on my question.
so I should listen to the Portuguese translation then.
Well, it's a privilege to be in a live session with you both, and I thank Henry for the generosity of that's us who is receiving gifts on your birthday. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
My question is very straightforward in terms in what moment did you both realize that the structures were liberating? And what's that story?
I want to go first on this one. So I think we were just working away, Luis. We were just working and we weren't really noticing. We were trying things and experimenting, and we needed to be told. And there were two instances, one early on, I don't think they were even named. I'm not even sure, but somebody came up to me.
They were not called
named.
that early on.
Somebody came up to me and said, I've never felt so much respect in any meeting. My voice was included. And a second thing is more of a funny story, but there was a Parisian celebrity facilitator. I mean, he would do the politicians and, had a vibrant practice. And he was watching some people come out in a hotel that some of his former clients that we were working with, they were coming out of the meeting room after a liberating session. And their scarf was askew. The tie was out of place. They looked a little less put together than usual, but they were smiling and laughing. And he immediately scheduled a flight to come over and talk to Henry. And he wanted a country, what do you call it? A license, a license like exclusive license for liberating structures in France.
Yeah.
And so things like those were hints that something was liberating, something important was being liberated.
So actually, that first big session that we had workshop that we had in Brazil, which was the first one, and that was like a 3-day thing, and we had 6 layers of managements in that room, from the bottom, first level, to a regional vice president. And the thing that was striking for us, that really was visible, is how quickly the people that were at the bottom of the pyramid started participating. During the first hour or two, they didn't say a word practically. It was everything was dominated by the more senior level in the organization. And that was the morning. In the afternoon, they were present, they were active, they were participating, they were on equal footing pretty much with everybody else. And that was kind of shocking and transformative and surprising. You're not used to see that, and particularly because of the visible difference from one moment to the other. So I don't know that we use the word necessarily liberating, but the idea certainly. The experience was there. Let's put it that way. Not the word, but the experience.
Yeah. One other story, at the end of this workshop, most of the frontline people were sitting in a big circle with their boss in Brazil, or there were a couple bosses, many levels up, and the bosses were asking, well, what things do you need from us? And you could see everybody got really uncomfortable because the frontline people were looking at each other, and they just pretty much said, we don't need anything from you to take the work forward. And for me, that was a moment. It was like, okay, the power relationship between the boss and the front line just got.
Yeah, the unspoken message, just get out of the way.
Well, no, it was more like you're just not that relevant. Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. Yeah, so if I come, you can just finish your thought or something.
No, you can be. Yeah, this is good. We understand a direct communication. Yeah.
Okay, so sala 3, Eliana, Luana, Márcia,
Eliana, Luana, Marcia,
Patrícia e Rita.
Patricia, and Rita.
Okay.
I'm going to be stating the question.
Do I speak in English or Portuguese? Which one is better? Can you hear me?
Yes. And I think
Okay.
The one that you're most comfortable speaking.
Okay, thank you so much. So first of all, nice to meet you. Congratulations, Henry. It's really nice to be here with you guys. So my group had a lot of questions, and we are more curious to hear from your experience. So the first question is, what was the most different target audience or context in which you applied the liberating structure? And if it's possible to apply with a group of children or families, for example?
Yes. Is is this a good enough answer for you? Yes, or do you need more details?
Well, I'd like to hear from your experience. So what was the most different target audience that you have applied the liberating structures?
There have been so many. I think for me, you know what 4-H is? 4-H, it's a youth development organization. I think it's global. I'm not entirely sure. I know it's North America. But I had a design group of 12 and 13-year-olds. And there was 1 or 2 faculty people, but we worked together for school health initiatives, and the students learned liberating structures to organize their school health initiative. How could they were interested in better food in the school. And typically it can be a struggle when you form a design group to get the design group members who don't know everything about liberating structures to co-lead, to take joint leadership. Well, with your 12 and 13-year-olds, there's no hesitation whatsoever. And so they picked it up. I was standing in front of the room. I also had this with someone that's called Astrid, a similar experience where this young woman, very young girl, looked at me and like, just, you can stand over there now. You know, I've got this. And so that was a time in which I was overjoyed to see how quickly the work was taken up, understood, and applied to something important to young people.
Yeah,
Thank
I've
you.
had some experience with young people too, and I have the same reaction. I would add one thing, and that is that speaking for myself, and I would tend to think that this may be a general thing. I think we are personally the biggest obstacle to using liberating structure. We personally, each one of us, in the sense that, and therefore what goes with that as an idea is that it is most difficult in those places and with those people where we have the strongest or the oldest or the habits. So where we are the most used to do always the same thing, that's where it's difficult to do something different. And also with those people that are in some way the dearest to you, because the fear of doing something wrong is greatest there than with strangers. So, for instance, using liberating structures in a family context is kind of spooky and unnatural. But that doesn't mean it's not needed or useful.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Patricia.
That was a hard one. There's been a lot of interesting variety groups we've been invited to work with. Yeah.
How long are those, how much time do we have this? You have special minutes because it feels so short.
Yeah, I have a very special minute in this clock, so it's
This is,
and we have 3 rooms to go, and we have room 4. So Astrid, Cara, Doha, Leticia, Marcio, and Sabina, who's gonna ask the question. Sabina.
I am. Hi, Keith and Henry. Thank you so much for being here, and happy birthday, Henry.
thank you.
So I'm still thinking about your answer to Patricia, and I think that what I'm going to ask is somewhat related. Our group was really taken by the concepts of healing and using liberating structures as healing tools or to structure conversations that promote healing. And the other concept that we were really taken by is failing forward. And I think, Henry, you kind of touched on both of those in the last answer. And I'd like to ask both of you, if you could share one story or insight or an aha moment about failing forward for people who might be confused about what that looks like.
Well, it looks like you're going forward and then you fail. I mean, if you go forward, you're going to fail. It happens all the time. But in order to fail, you have to go forward. If you just stand in the same place, nothing is going to happen. So part of using liberating structure involves failing. I mean, this is normal because what you're doing essentially when you're using liberating structure, you're making assumption, you're choosing, okay, my first step moving forward is this, and therefore I'm going to use that. And then if then after that, I'm going to do this and I'm going to use this. Well, sometimes you're right, sometimes you're wrong. So this is part of failing is learning. I mean, when you mess up, you learn something. Oh, this didn't work. Time to think again and to reconsider. And the preparation and the conversation you have before deciding what you're going to do are usually very helpful because they prepare you for improvising because you consider various options and so forth, and you have to pick something. So you pick something and sometimes it doesn't work. But that's part of the fun.
Well, I think just an example, a more subtle example would be impromptu networking or 1, 2, 4 all. You start with here's my idea about what's happening, what's important. You hear somebody else's and that shift in a group of 4, or you hear another person's view and it shifts again, and you get a deeper, quickly it could be small things that you see, or like that thing that I thought was happening isn't happening. And each of those are learning moments, but it's also a bit of, I didn't have the full view. Right. And so as that progresses and the iterative cycling happens, you continue to, you're shaping together a new thing. It just happens because of the pattern. And that can feel, if you didn't predict in advance what that thing is that you're shaping, which you probably did not, then that can feel like you're failing forward.
The unpredictability
Makes sense.
is
Just one second there. You know, it's like you're going for something, a new option, a surprise, right? So in that, if you're paying attention, that isn't where you started. It's a series of small corrections, which you could call failures. Sorry, Henry.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that the unpredictability is part of what you're doing. You are working with something which is unpredictable because you're working with a group of people, and allowing full participation of everybody to say and do whatever. That's not predictable. It's the opposite of the traditional view, which is, we're going to tell them what to do and control and make sure they're doing it, So there you are saying, no, we're going to listen to everybody, and we are going to include as many people as we need to include as much as possible. Well, that's opening the door to surprises, which is, part of the fun and part of the fear. This is one of the reasons you're always afraid when you use a liberating structure, at least a little bit, because you really never know what's going to happen. You cannot know. But that's part of the satisfaction as well. This is kind of, at least those of us who like it, you get a kick out of that. It's fun.
Yeah.
So your question is related to the first one, the healing part.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what the relationship is, but I think the experience of entering new territory and shaping something is fundamentally life affirming and does some amount of healing, even if you aren't explicitly working on healing.
Yeah.
But there are some, if you haven't looked at grief walking and some of the other things which aren't formally in the repertoire, they're formally out there. They more expressly focus on healing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
It's a little short. It's because that subject of healing is really
That's
interesting one.
Yeah. And there's Carolina with her special minutes.
Well, and personally, I would love to hear more about this healing part, but I think we have 2 questions more. And also I would ask Henri and Keith some minutes more that we agree with you before, because I think we need maybe 3 minutes more of your time, if it is okay.
Well, you're going to have to send a bigger cake then.
I'll do it. And so, thank you, Sabina. And Sala 5, Alaba, Alice, Julia, Rafa, Iris. So who's gonna ask the question?
We also had 2 questions to ask of you. First of all, thank you, Keith and Henri. Henri, happy birthday.
Thank
We
you.
sent you hugs here from Rio de Janeiro. And we had 2 questions, and I'm going to try to amalgamate them into one to answer both questions. So we would like to have an example of some moment that you've been through where you felt a bigger resistance from the participants in terms of understanding and sharing within liberating structures. And considering that, in your point of view, what are the structures that you feel that people connect to more quickly and that people use more because there is more, I don't know if the right word would be acceptance, but it's a context where they get involved with those structures better or easier. Thank you very much.
I find it difficult to deal with your question because I don't feel like the question is related to the structure. It's related to the people. So it's more who are the people and why and in what sort of circumstances that are going to resist and react against or be afraid or whatever, as opposed to which particular structure, is going to scare people versus which ones are considered the friendly one. Well, I mean, you can make your own guesses there. I mean, there are some that are obviously simpler and easier and so forth, and others that are more getting somewhere where it is likely to hurt. If you do a TRIZ, you're gonna pull skeletons out of the closet probably in an organization. So if you do a impromptu networking with that same group, that's pretty safe. So I think people are the issue, not the structure. That's the problem. This is the challenge. People are the challenge, not the structure. The structure are not an issue, my view. Biased, obviously.
Just reflecting on a recent experience with a big successful international company, and Fisher, I'm talking about the one we're working with right now because he's listening. They they pick the liberating structures they're comfortable with. Our TRIZ, Discovery and Action Dialogue. We've been using MAD-T, Appreciative Interview. What else? Fisher could write it in chat. Some things that seem kind of familiar to solve a big complex like the future. We're working on the future of work. How could you have flexibility and great business results? More of both. So we're working on that. But the resistance comes from not having the predetermined outcome. And so one of the really lovely fellows who's plays an organizational development role or a learning role in the organization just says, everybody has white knuckles. They're holding on because they don't know what the answers will be. And so the resistance is really to is this a challenge that we all need to contribute to? Does every voice need to be heard to adapt and creatively and productively adapt to all of the things over the last few years that have called out for more flexibility, more adaptability at work? Do we need everybody to do that? Is it worth, and we had a conversation, sometimes you just need to repeat why it is that you're doing the work. Why is it that we're including all these voices? And then the resistance, the autopilot, and even if you've worked with liberating structures a while with a client, they snap back to the old thing. We've got to have the result predetermined. And then we have to get buy-in. And when you hear that, you need to flip it back to, well, how are we doing? Are we figuring it out? Did we figure it out? Do we know what we want to, what the outcome is in advance? Well, no. So I don't think that ever goes away. I think it's easy to snap back, flip back to the, we just want to know, we want to control. But it's not, this is not the kind of challenge we face that benefits from over control, from control. Yeah. I hope that helps. I don't know. Never goes away. There's always some resistance because we've had centuries of history leading up to this moment. Good. Thank you. I don't know if that's an answer.
Obrigada. Bad here because I meant the, you know, the person.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And we have Sala 6, Gabriel, Giovanna, Marcela, Mariana, e Thaisa. Giovanna, it's already there.
Hi, I'm going to be stating the question. Thank you so much for making yourselves available. It's an honor to have you with us, Harry. We wish you all the best on your birthday. And we would like to know, how can we be sure? How do we know when we state a question if it is an excellent question? How do you determine, how do you build an excellent question?
You don't know. You find out afterwards. You can, you know, you cannot be sure, but that's okay because you're going to find out something. Even if you ask the wrong question, something will, there will be some outcome. If, whatever the wrong question is, you know, I'm not even sure there is such a thing that you can really call the wrong question. But if it isn't, if the outcome is not what you were kind of hoping or expecting and so forth, then you will have learned something. That particular question, the way it was phrased or the way you organized the group or whatever, that something didn't quite. And so it brings you to the next thing, which is, okay, what have we learned from this and what do we do next? Which other structure should we use or which other step should we take or that kind of thing. So that's not a problem. It is only a problem if there is that attitude that you have to have the right question and the right answer. That's not the right way to start. You're
Well, I want to give an example. So we both started working in hospitals to demonstrate that this kind of work could stop the spread of superbugs in hospitals. It went beyond hospitals, but and so we were talking about the question or invitation for TRIZ and the first invitation for discovery and action dialogue. And we probably ran through a dozen different ways to ask, how do you know when you've put a patient at risk of getting a superbug while they're in your care? And that's very explicit. It's goes right at the challenge at hand. But we didn't get it right the first time. It was something like we had some vague thing that didn't address the individual's knowledge of the problem at hand. And what I recommend usually, whatever you come up with first is not going to be what you end up with. So try it on one individual. One of the earlier questions was, what can be done at the individual level? Almost any invitation that you make with a liberating structure can first be tried with an individual. Like, can one person answer that question? And can you have a good conversation with that one person? So I think you should get over yourself when you're thinking up questions and then test it and extreme settings in a whole range of people and in very extreme settings. So with the superbug work, we went to the ER, we went to the ICU, we went to the front of the hospital where people walk in. We talked to the volunteers, the management, everybody, and kept trying things until we sharpened it, made something that was useful across the vast array of people involved.
If you start off with the idea that you're going to come up with the wrong question, that's kind of a good step. You're on safe ground there, because that's probably, and that therefore starting with the idea also that if I do this just by myself, I'm even more likely to end up with the wrong question. And you start thinking about, who can I do this with? Who are the people that are in this bath together with me, or who know more than I do that I can bring in to figure out what is the right question, and then see what happens, and enjoy the journey, the discovery.
Thank you, Giovanna.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Harry and Keith, thank you very much. It was amazing. And I wish we could have like 10 minutes for each question, maybe next time.
You don't need time for the question, you need time for the answers, because Keith and I can talk forever. So, that's the problem you have.
And you're very nice at trying to keep us in boundaries. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, next time maybe in person.
Today is Henry's birthday, so we have to let him go celebrate his birthday. Shall we invite everyone to say goodbye in all sorts of languages, Spanish, English? Happy birthday, dear Harry. Thank you, Harry. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Vai traduzindo aí, Isabel, vai traduzindo.
Feliz aniversário.
Happy birthday.
Feliz cumpleaños.
All right.
Any final words, Henry?
Joyeux anniversaire.
Merci, Frédéric. No, other than you're welcome to invite me anytime, because I always have fun. And
Thank you, Harry.
This is a wonderful, wonderful group of people that you have gathered, and I love the atmosphere and the enthusiasm and the personalities, and it's really very nice. Even when I listen to the wrong language, it sounds good. So I hope I am still around for another birthday and then a year from now. I wish you a wonderful meeting. Take care.
Thank you, Henry. Enjoy your day. Bye. Keith, thank you.
Obrigado, Keith.
I'm going to hang around a little bit. I want to hear some of these shifting shares.
Oh, nice.